I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They asked me who the chairman was, and I said it's Mark Green.
Thanks for volunteering me.
Your name's on the list.
Well, we don't have a formal agenda tonight, but just kind of in normal fashion, we typically begin by reviewing the minutes, and I did not receive any minutes. Were there any minutes composed from the prior meeting?
Not when we have video. The video is considered our minutes.
Okay, so we've opted to shift gears on that? Okay.
Yep. Hopefully it keeps working.
Okay, is there any follow-up action that needs to take place from the prior meeting?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So then our new business really is to begin to have some conversations regarding nuisance and abandoned buildings, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so unfortunately, I was only able to get these printed and really have not began to digest them at all, to really create much of a conversation other than this is an arena that we need to be thoughtful about and try and come to something that is readily administered and not subjective, right?
Right.
We need to create something that is relatively objective, and so this subject matter becomes, unfortunately, somewhat subjective. So trying to create objective lines of acceptance is difficult.
And the legality of it.
Correct. So I mean, it's something it's going to take a little bit of time, and so we've got something here from Oakwood and something from Lima. So I mean, is there anything that has anyone had an opportunity to review any of these and see things in here that they find either noteworthy, in the pro category or noteworthy in the, con category?
In the Oakwood, on section 2, very first part of section 2, it says the chief of police of the village of Oakwood shall have free access at any reasonable hour while showing appropriate identification when a building is occupied to make an inspection. I think there's some legal issues. If he doesn't have a warrant, police just can't come in and say, I'm coming in to do an inspection.
Yeah,
I don't think that will work.
Well, I don't.
Because once he's inside, it's his legal obligation to check for other violations,
Yeah.
which would be whatever, drugs or, guns. So I think that part, if we go, or some part of the Oakwood, then we may need to modify that. I'm not a lawyer, but normally that's kind of the assumption of a search warrant.
Well, and here again, this is where things start getting a little murky for me, is like, what is the role? You don't necessarily have to identify specifically the chief of police, but what's the role of the police in the administration of these things? Because in here, they're saying that, it's my understanding, the way I just scanned it over, that the police determine that a building is unsafe. It's like, is that really something we want them doing?
Yeah.
So somewhere in there, we need to make a handoff, I think, between a zoning inspector, a building inspector, someone that has some credibility in that field, and then hand it off to the police, right? Or that's part of what we need to understand is what's the protocol of going from, we've identified a violation, and now we're going to take action. So what does that course of action look like?
Well, in section 3 of this one, it'll be on the second page, about the last sentence or two, make a determination whether a building, dwelling, or structure creates a public nuisance under this section. The chief of police may utilize the services of a building inspector, building and/or demolition contractor, or other suitable persons. So it does give, if he doesn't feel qualified, which I'm sure by the state statute, he's not certified to
Right.
make that determination. But whether that's, the village can make an ordinance that overrides that, I would say, I don't know. Because I truly don't know if that's acceptable or not. I hate to pick apart their ordinance. I don't want to make something that's not going to be.
In section 3, it talks a
Enforceable.
little bit about what they're gonna be looking for.
Right, yeah, the qualifies as an ordinance. Bryce Steiner brought up earlier that Antwerp has an existing ordinance to deal with this, but it's not accessible online. I couldn't bring it up. It's an ordinance that's been previous, I don't know what year it was even designed, but it's been in mothballs for a while. They've now scanned it, it's in a PDF file of some sort.
It was George who told me about it. He says Oakwoods actually came from ours.
Yeah, he's
And so he said, as chief here, and then became chief there, he took it from there to there. He's got copies of it, and he's used it multiple times.
Does he feel that it's forcible? That he has
He said the
authority?
only issue has been council has been the one that said no on certain things, such as like the trailer or the old car wash, stuff like that. He said they've been written up multiple times to have them just using our own ordinance. So I don't have a copy of it. I was only going by what George told me that we do have one.
So it's not in this zoning ordinance manual that we have?
Not that I know
No,
of.
there's nothing in ours. The only thing that's in ours, let's see if I can find
I didn't see anything.
it. It's on page 51, I think you want to see it. It's under repairs and maintenance. And this falls under the section of non-conforming use of land and buildings. And it's real brief and it's very vague as far as what they consider an unsafe building, non-conforming building. There's no description of what that qualifies as or what it takes to become non-conforming. So that's the only thing that's in our zoning laws as far as for unsafe structures.
Right.
They consider it non-conforming.
He's coming.
Oh, it's 5?
Yeah, it was a 5 o'clock meeting.
Okay, it's all good. I might be messing up council times and these times.
So John, we were just starting to have just like creative conversation about the stuff that is in the ordinances from Oakwood for nuisance buildings and things. Have you had a chance to look through these or, okay?
I do, I have notes. Good.
Dan, help us understand what the adjudication process looks like. So in this situation, we
That's
find a
the only thing we have
violation,
in there right now.
we issue a
in our
citation,
ordinance.
right, from the
Can you read that?
village. You know, the receiving party objects and wants to, you know, basically fight that and make it go away. What does that process look like from that point forward?
Don't they have to go to the appeals board?
That's what I'm trying to understand. Is that, so that would be the normal course of action?
That's what I think. They'd
Okay,
have
so
to
then they would go to the appeals board. And then if
If
it's,
they're disagreeing with a decision,
right, and then, so then we get back into, I think some of the situation that we saw happen in the past year or so where we need to make sure that we're providing true formal channels, right?
Right.
That can carry through to the next level of adjudication.
right,
So then that next level of adjudication, if there's still disagreement beyond the appeals board, then it goes to the county courts, correct? Okay.
yeah. It wouldn't come to me.
And so then from the village's standpoint, the village would hand off to the prosecuting attorney? Is that how that transpires? He would represent the
I would
village?
think, yeah,
Okay. Are all those mechanisms in place as far as you know?
I I don't know.
Okay.
Never had it
I,
happen.
this is all uncharted territory for me. I just want
Yeah,
to
I
exercise it through my mind to say, you know, if we're going to create something like this and intend that it become enforceable, you know, let's at least understand the chain of command that it is enforceable and provides fair justice, right? So, I think that if we have those multiple layers of adjudication, I think that should suffice, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Within the context of these ordinances, then, do we need to create a definition of how that, what that sits as far as a violation, in order to make it
I think
lawful?
we need some kind of guidelines to go by.
That's what I'm, you know, failure to comply results in what? I mean, do we need to specify that from a legal context?
Yeah, we would have to have some ground rules to go back,
Okay.
fall back on.
Okay, so we may need some advice from our solicitor on what that needs to look like
Okay.
when we get to that. I assume that would be like the closing paragraph in this.
It's in section 8, is where it covers the cost of,
On the Oakwood one.
yeah, but this may be ours too. I say if this was
Yeah.
copied word for word, this might already be on our books. I don't know if it was or not.
Yeah.
If all they changed was just the name of the town, I really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when I was looking through it, that was some of the things when I was looking through these ordinances, is some of the fees that are in here, which some of them are probably standard. Some of them, I'm not sure how they originated. I think there's like one that's a yearly. Here it is, section 4, 2, and 3 on 2301. That was kind of interesting. I don't know where they came up with those numbers, but I figured that was something that if you went in that direction, you'd figure out. But yeah, then one of the big things, just looking at, a monitoring program and identification, that line really stuck out to me, because I just want to make sure if you do something like this, like you said, to have the process well defined.
Right.
Who's responsible for these actions, who has the authorities to do these things. I noticed the police chief in this particular one, in 2203, I'm kind of moving back and forth, but there's some actions that they're responsible for, which I don't know if they should be responsible for, in our situation. There is actually one where the chief of police can give written notice of what they need to fix, and I don't know if is that a chief of police item? I can see them delivering the letter, but I don't know who dictates what repairs are necessary. I hope we would utilize the service of a building inspector, or some authorized figure that's capable of making that
Right.
decision. These were just some notes as I was going through here.
Daniel is a licensed inspector.
Yeah, he was my first thought,
Yeah.
right? Like the zoning inspector should certainly be the one that is, the chief of police, they're kind of the eyes on the ground a lot, right? They're patrolling, the police are patrolling around, so they probably have an idea of what some of these buildings are or where they are, but the zoning inspector should definitely take a look.
I would agree.
And he would be my authorized figure.
Especially since he's licensed.
Yeah, since he's actually licensed.
Right. He should know.
Yeah,
I also had a really big problem with 2203 section 2. That one to me is a big no-no. But
Yeah, that seemed pretty inappropriate to me.
That's
It's like, okay,
that's like Fourth Amendment issue for me.
Yeah.
Exigent circumstances, maybe. If
Is that it?
But boy, that Section 2, I don't like at all.
Certainly is, isn't it?
2009-27 is our ordinance that matches this,
Okay.
or close to it.
2009-27.
Yep, 2009-27.
Okay.
But you won't be able to bring it up online.
You want me to print it out, or
Yeah.
see if I can?
Email it to us would be ideal.
Okay, how about, I have
2009 what?
all of the old ordinances scanned.
Oh, look at you.
Do you, if anybody has a thumb drive, I can copy it and they're searchable.
Okay.
So,
Do not.
we need to get them
Not
online,
with me.
but they're scanned, and that's how, so I just found that right here. And anybody that's got one, I'll be glad to make copies. I think Brian is working to get them online, because we did get them scanned at the end of last year, I think, finally.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll print this one out.
So does that read pretty much the same as what is on the 22,
It sounds to me like it.
22-3 or 03?
Let's see, is that a?
Yeah,
See
in
if they'll
that,
let me print it up
that
first.
section 2, it says, police has probable cause to believe. Now, I don't know if that little spot in there gives him that leeway, or probable cause,
So
I don't know.
my understanding of somebody entering into your home is if you give them consent to enter, they can enter. If there's extingent cause, so like you're destroying evidence, you're a suspect fleeing, you are in immediate, imminent danger. Somebody is screaming in the house, they can enter. If there's emergency aid scenarios, and I think those are like the big causes. I don't know if he could be like, this looks bad to me, I need to come, I can come into your home
Not just
without
a
a
hunch.
warrant,
Yeah.
without a warrant, yeah, I mean,
I've heard you don't have running water, let me come check. No.
Correct, right? You need to have a warrant.
Right.
And so, you know, this could definitely be reworded to the point where, like, I don't know, if evidence is gathered and we went and got a warrant, I mean, maybe, but at that point in time, I would try to get like an inspection done. There's gotta be a different route in my mind.
Are we worried about the inside or just the outside?
Well, we're primarily, ours is nuisance, health hazard. The outside of the structure is, you know, it's got windows missing, doors missing, the roof's dilapidated, it's an eyesore, whatever.
Right.
As far as going inside to check the plumbing and sanitation part of it, that's not really the town's place. That's gotta be the health department.
I've been in a lot of places that
Right,
are bad.
right.
Is that our concern? I don't know.
Yeah, because
I mean, I don't like it, but
well, you know, the way at least initially that in my mind the initial intent is, you know, buildings that, like you said,
Falling down.
They're falling down.
Dilapidated.
They you know,
Eyesore.
last thing you want is some kids playing around. The next thing you know, some bricks fall off of a dilapidated building and hurts one of them. Asbestos, something that's like literally a public, you know, health and safety
that
risk.
we go after.
This isn't like we're just walking into people's homes and,
Mhm.
and saying, "Oh man, you don't have running water." You know, I hopefully if that's the case, they try to fix that for their own good. But I don't think
So the other component of the nuisance, the other attribute, I guess, is damage, right? So, you know, we as the village need to ensure that if a home is damaged by either fire or storm or vehicular damage, that it is, you know, at least safe to continue to occupy. You know, and that there is some foreseeable timeline to make it habitable again. And so I think that's kind of the other aspect of this. It isn't just focusing on blighted buildings, it's, you know, those can become a blighted building if they just never fix them, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of the other component that we need to be addressing within this is, and, you know, I agree with kind of that general thought of, we're really more concerned with the structure being habitable than sanitary, right? This talks about unhealthful or unsanitary conditions. That's really outside of the scope of what we're trying to accomplish, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
What's your thought?
Well, I agree with that part of it, you know, that's a health department.
Right,
That's
that's-
an issue
that's-
with that. And we're just interested in getting rid of those places that are unsafe, that are eyesore, they devalue other people's property because of their sitting there in dilapidated state of affair.
Yes.
Ours is real similar to theirs. This has 6 sections, this one has 11, so they've added some verbiage to it.
Right.
As far as,
I think we try to figure something out, even if we take it from there, just for the outside appearance, or,
yeah, I would say, since we have an ordinance in place currently, our avenue would be to amend what we have.
correct,
Well,
and enforce it.
well, and fold it back into the zoning, right? When
Yeah.
we have zoning regulations and things that are, you know, of substance, and they're not sitting within the zoning stuff that everyone might want to refer to, makes it very difficult,
Yeah, that's what I've
right? I mean, we
said all
we
along,
should-
all
we
these
shouldn't
ordinances,
leave these.
deal with ordinances are out there.
Yeah, we shouldn't have these tripwires hiding in the closet.
They should be, even if we keep that as an ordinance, it should be in the zoning book.
Correct.
Yes, that was another thing, which you.
Yeah, it does, we don't have to renumber everything.
You have something.
Right.
When you go and read it, you don't see it.
So you're looking for, but yeah, I'd say that's our avenue of approach would be to amend this, whatever it is.
Okay.
And I don't know, to sit down and read both of them word for
I was gonna say,
word,
yeah,
compare.
maybe let's just kind of fall back and each of us try to spend some time
Can you make copies?
to understand and review what we have now and kind of compare it to what other
That way
things
we all
are
got a
taking
copy.
place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then let's figure out, all right, let's amend that and then figure out a way to fold it back into our zone.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would say, you know, as far as section 2, we need, you know, we could probably do that tonight, come up with something maybe that the chief of police can't enter the building unless he's got a warrant.
Right.
That's-
Does the one we have now, does it have this section 2 basically in this same phraseology? Oh yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
bad.
that was word for word.
Yeah, that-
And then with that, a course of action, if we find problems with the outside or inside,
You see, that's,
how we go about,
right.
that, like you said, that's kind of,
So that, yeah, because that's, I was trying to walk through this and I was reading this earlier today, because I was like, okay, let's just say police is out there, maybe they see a building that's dilapidated, or, you know, somebody complains and talks about one, and Daniel walks out there and, you know, maybe he makes an immediate determination that, yeah, this is maybe suspect, right? So how does that process occur where now maybe there's a more formal, you know, notice that, hey, you know, we need to initiate an actual formal inspection and just, you know, to actually confirm whether those are legitimate issues or not, right? That's where my mind is. There's gotta be that formal inspection step to absolutely validate your suspicions, right?
Right.
Because I don't know what type of mess that could cause or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, this creates, you know, a high likelihood of escalation, right? No one wants to be threatened from their home.
right.
And so, you know, we need to be very cautious about how this all comes together. We're not just talking about an abandoned house that's, right? It's potentially something that people are living in, so.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. Yeah, for me, this initial draft is mostly buildings that I think a lot of people, if you ask, probably realize that they are vacant, dilapidated. Nobody's living inside of them.
Right.
But yes, this legislation can affect people who are living in a situation. I want nothing, my pure intent is not to drive anybody out of anything, no undue harm, right? So, I just don't want that to pop up. Looks fairly similar. So for ours, this 2027 looks like it's almost a copy of the 2203, right? So the 2301 is kind of its own separate thing. Secure and safe.
So do we change the chief of police to building inspector, or building, basically Daniel? Is that something that,
In the context of this, do we even need to nail it down to a person,
oh,
right?
okay.
Can't we just say, if the village determines?
And then we,
Authorized person or authorized.
I think what you're alluding to is, because it literally goes, the chief of police shall have free access at any, like.
yeah, we can't have that.
Yeah, you know, like, I know what you're talking about here, but yeah. But yes, I would say,
I mean,
something like yeah.
to me, section 2 can just be removed, right? The section
Yes.
2 is all about breaking and entering.
Yeah, that's not.
But then when we go to section 3, right, upon determination by the village, right, that's all we need to say, by
That's
determination
correct.
of the village.
Yeah.
And then we
I
can
don't like
decide.
the chief of police.
Yeah,
That
it
is-
shouldn't, we don't want to nail it down to a person, because then if we have a change in roles or titles, it's like, no, it's just,
Well, in section 2, if you get the other one I had made up for Lima, it'd be on, just have it here. 514-02, dangerous structure declared nuisance. It describes where the inspections are, how they are done. It says all dangerous structures as described in this section are hereby declared to be public nuisance
email.
and shall be repaired or demolished in accordance with the order from the zoning inspector. Inspections are conducted by the zoning inspector for the street, sidewalk, driveway, or alley. Where, it specifies where he can make the inspection. That way he can't be on the property. And I thought about adding that, or joining property with permission, like a neighbor's called and said, hey, the back of this house is falling in, but you
Yeah.
can't see it.
Right.
Other than if you're on adjacent.
Right.
Yeah, you only have one point of access.
Yeah, the front looks good, yeah. Flowers are growing, what more do you want?
Bill, where was that at?
It's in,
I'm not seeing Lima's.
514-02 is,
He edited in the thread of emails today.
He added.
It was in the emails
Okay.
today.
Yeah, it's the one right above the most recent. I missed that one.
There's the one before Daniel's. I think Daniel
Yeah.
sent it, right?
That's the one I saw.
Okay, that's the,
because we talked
section
about that.
514,
Yeah, they showed.
and which one was that? Oh, 51402, dangerous structures declared nuisance.
Yeah, here again,
They're in the window.
Whatever needs to be
I would
spelled
step
out.
away from putting a title, a position, or name, right? With an order from the village, inspections conducted by the village. And how that gets administered it's up to the village. It can be a third party, it can be Daniel, whatever the shoe fits in that place and time.
Yeah, because Daniel may not always be our
Right.
zoning inspector, we might have
Right.
someone who isn't qualified.
Right, and the adjudication process is gonna weed that out, right? And they come in to the appeals board and say, well, Jane came over and inspected my house and didn't like it, and I got this disrepair notice. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Well,
Yeah.
okay. Right, I mean, there's a process to weed that out pretty quick. Doesn't have to be done by one single person.
Okay, guys, here is a newer version of it. That's the newest one I could find. Hopefully it is the newest one. And it's
Oh, wow.
longer,
It does
It's
have
longer,
11
okay.
sections. I would say that this original one did not have
so you
that.
may want to throw away the
July
single-page sheet ones.
2013
Yeah.
passed. Tom Vanderveer.
Okay.
Let me collect those other ones so they aren't getting mixed up. That way you guys have the latest and greatest, unless you want the old one.
No, you gotta find it though.
Man, that section 2 lived in there a long time.
And I'll take your,
So we'll get rid of the old one.
the one that's not stable. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that can happen.
So I probably should give the Oakwood a call and be like, hey, you got a Fourth Amendment violation. Send in one of your ordinances.
But like,
Probably all right
Taken
until
right.
somebody complains, and then it's not all right.
right.
And then they've got legal
Exactly.
ground because
Is this something we can have our solicitor review
well,
and take out what can't happen
it's
if we don't know?
it's more economical. We get charged by the hour for solicitor, you know, if he's gonna go through here and nitpick this. If we can get ahead of this, working for
Take out
free,
what we
yeah, and
think.
kinda get it the way we think, and then it's easier, he can just kinda review it and. I'm not saying that, there's so many hours a month that he's paid to do legal work for the village. Once he hits that threshold, that is, I don't know what the fee is per hour.
Not, at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be an ordinance. It can just be part of the zoning regulations and go through that process, right?
Well, either way, it's the same process.
So what I mean, it goes through that same process.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to get away from having this thing hiding in a closet.
yep.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was kind of reading through it, I felt like most of it's fairly solid, like, you know, in terms of, you know, like, obviously there's some quits about personnel, you know, I don't know if the timing is appropriate, I know they talk 48 hours, 30, you know, there's certain time frames that happen.
like that either.
Yeah, a lot of these things, they take time to work out. I mean,
Correct,
Some of these
right.
things are gonna be 180 days kind of thing for remedies,
Yeah.
right? You know, if you got a problem, you gotta get it remedied, work through an insurance company. Let's think about a fire
Yeah.
casualty loss, right? You know, these folks, their house burned down, right? I mean, it's been,
Contract.
Well, and your
It's been
insurance.
5
is gonna-
months already,
you know, there's
right? So-
investigations that go on.
right, but I mean, yeah, that timing stuff, we've gotta be a little thoughtful to what it really takes to remedy a problem.
Yeah, that stuff is definitely stuck in the weeds, but I think the framework isn't like terrible. I just want, there's a lot of, you know, words in there that I really, a definition section. As long as we make things clear, or in our zoning book, we reference, you know, we make sure those are really well defined and what, you know, dilapidated means. What
Right.
do these things, what do these mean?
And the other thing is, let's be honest, a lot of people don't have the extra money to fix something right away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's gotta be some,
Correct, right?
Well,
and I know we want it done, but we gotta think about that too. That's not,
Well, something as simple as a roof, right? You know, there are still places in Florida that have blue tarps from,
Right.
you know, hurricane that went through 2 years ago because there's not enough contractors to put roofs on top
Right.
of houses. So, I mean, there's just all these weird circumstances that I think at the end of the day, we can create some caveats, you know, within that to give some,
reasonable amount of
some relief,
time.
right.
So,
at least
reasonable amount of effort.
effort. That's the big thing.
that's what I was just thinking about today. I was just thinking, man, you know, some of these, you know, like some of these costs that are in here, I was just kind of like, oh man, in the event that something would happen where somebody's actually living in it, right now I don't see that, but you know, who knows? 10 years from now, something might happen. I don't know, right? But you know, I know buildings that are falling apart and those aren't occupied at all, and it's like, hey, we need to have a method to tear this down
Yes.
and throw it onto taxes or something. You know, like this has to be done because it's literally a public health safety risk, right? That's a
And
little
how-
bit of a different realm.
How do we go after that? Because we do have some in town.
Well, it covers it in here if it's determined that, you know, it is a nuisance, that it gives the village, I think there's a time period, I don't remember, 90 days or something. If it hasn't been changed, that they have the authority to go in there, hire a contractor, have it demolished. All costs are then referred to the auditor's office and is applied to their taxes.
Yeah, section 7 kind of talks about it. The administrator will advertise for bids after the timing has been done.
Right.
And then demolition and removal of the building, and then they'll just tack that on to the proper taxes. And then if they want to appeal, it looks like it elevates pretty high. And then that demolition is put on hold until those court findings are done.
But if we're gonna have this in here, we need to enforce it, right?
Yep.
And make sure the steps get done.
Right.
And make sure it gets done.
Under prudent.
Right.
Yeah, it's the burden of proof that it has to be done. I want to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
however that is, everything's done officially, and fair.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, but I would think, what little I know about courts, on something like this, you have to have photos of.
Right.
Because when we was over at the county meeting last year or something, and the judge was there, she said, you have to take photos of in the current violation state. And then when the court case comes around, you have to take photos again to prove that there has been no movement done, or if there has, how much, to back it up. It has to be there. And she said, if you take it on your phone and bring it over there, your phone becomes evidence, and you lose it. So you don't take the pictures on your phone. If you do, you gotta print them out, because you can't just bring over digital copies.
That was Judge Rice.
That's what you said, wasn't it? So I think that needs to be included in this ordinance, so that it's, when it comes that time, somebody doesn't make the mistake and send him a letter and they've never taken any picture to prove what they consider as a nuisance or hazard, health hazard. So I think we need to kind of implement that into it. Because that was, if it goes on into the common police court, that's what they're gonna want.
Well, and honestly, those should be provided, you know, to the defendant with this initial letter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the actual notice.
You know,
saying, hey, here's what's wrong.
Here's the
These are correct.
inspection report, here's the photographs.
Exactly.
Here's your violation notice, you know, you have 90 days to respond, or whatever the case might be.
Correct.
You know, with some appropriate remediation, you know, and then the process begins. But, yeah, I mean, that should be just really a part of that package.
Yeah, but, you know, that's something to add to it so we
I
don't.
agree
Yeah.
completely. So they can't say, well, I didn't know that's what you wanted fixed.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
you know, if you're gonna basically go after somebody, give them all the information.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the front door, it's all right, just the back door's what was missing. Sort of, you know, something of that nature, we shouldn't be laughing about it, but that's, you know, how that happens.
So do we want to go through this before next month and
Yeah.
pick apart or whatever?
Yeah, I think everybody can kind of go through and,
Yeah, we just need to keep in mind that, you know, we need to think about this more than just an abandoned home, right? So,
Yes.
you know, some of the circumstances that happen is, you know, a collision crashes into a home.
Yes.
And, you know, now the structure is jeopardized, but those people have nowhere to go. you know, and they're gonna continue to live in the back half of the house, right? We just gotta be thinking about how the people's lives are affected by this. You know, they have a kitchen fire, but, you know, here again, they don't have anywhere to go, they're
I
gonna
agree.
cook on the back porch, whatever the case might be. You know, we don't wanna create hostile conditions, we wanna try and help make sure there's remedies coming. And so, just as we continue to grind through this, let's just be mindful of more than just that abandoned
Yeah,
house that has critters living in it.
Yes.
I'm not sure, I'd say, since this is an ordinance now, 2013-32, how we would go about generating an ordinance that would end up in zoning book, or whether we have to deal with this one.
I think the
To make a
appropriate action would
replacement.
be, you know, the way I see it happen, let's, excuse me, let's do what we can to get this corrected and put into the zoning book. And then once it gets through the approval process at that same time, you basically make an ordinance or whatever to remove this ordinance from whatever existence. I don't know how that happens, but
Yeah, there's a procedure for it, in order to, you know, this one takes place in that.
correct.
Yeah.
I've seen it in other ordinances where it supersedes previous ordinance,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
And I think that's what this section 9 is trying to do. Previous ordinances and rules of administration that are not consistent with this ordinance are hereby set aside, revoked, and held for naught. I
We
imagine.
just need to have that somewhere in there.
So section 2, we kind of have a consensus that should be pretty well eliminated.
I don't see any reason to have it. And here again, we might want to talk to Daniel a little bit about this, but, you know, what we're trying to identify is this a safe structure?
Yeah.
You know, we're not worried about, it's not within our scope to be mindful of sanitary conditions and unhealthful things. I mean,
Well, then in section
I don't think
3,
we need section 2.
on
I
the
think it's
termination by the
primarily
village,
that.
and then just kind of cross out the chief of police. Just eliminate that. Any public dwelling, or that way it's termination of the village be the council or mayor or whoever.
Also, section 3 there at the bottom, it says, "The chief of police may utilize services of the building inspector."
Yeah, for me, I feel like that, you know, at that stage in the game, that you would already have pushed through, right? Somebody has complained, or, you know, yeah, please, the zoning inspector has found the suspect building. Maybe you gather some evidence, I don't know how that process would work first.
Bill, do we add those photos in there somewhere?
Yeah, it would have to be on the inspection side of it.
Yeah.
I thought one of these
You saw
talked
something
about the
somewhere?
village has to keep a file. That might be for the other one potentially. Something does say something about keeping a file in regards to that property. Yeah, obviously that's a absolutely agree on that.
Well, like in here, the appeals process is to the village council. It's like, no.
Oh, yeah, the routing, yeah.
Right, we don't
The
want this
flow
going
is
to the council.
going to be different. And that's how I was thinking it too. So suspect building, complaint comes in, Daniel goes out there, maybe takes some photos. Is there like a review? You know, is there a review process of those, like before you initiate? You know, we've come to suspect, there's evidence, we need to go through the zoning book and make sure, you know, is this actual violations, approve it formally, and then proceed forward with like a formal inspection, like.
Well, and I know what you're getting at. So we kind of do that right now with signs, right? So
Yeah.
with signs, we don't have enough structured framework or detail to try and give guidance to people that want to make a sign or install a sign. And so we just kind of left it open to say, you know, if you have interest in putting in a sign, bring it to us as a group and we'll collectively. And so we could do the same thing with, you know, taking this and creating a citation of, you know, it could, if we wanted, we could make it a consensus thing before it gets initiated out. So it's not Daniel that's doing it, right?
It's not his opinion.
Well,
Right.
I was also thinking if there's a third party, right?
Right.
And they're bringing information, you know, that third party has zero authority to cite something. You know, there's got to be that action, right? And so, and I agree, it should be under the way we're structured is the zoning, right? So this could make that decision and say, okay, yeah, you know, it's clearly that there's enough evidence here. You know, we feel comfortable initiating that process.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty aggressive thing, right?
Right,
To
yeah.
begin this, so it's like, you know, with just everything that's on the line, it really, to me, it should almost be a committee kind of consensus before.
Absolutely. I feel like it is a very serious and there's a
Yeah.
lot of weight behind that.
I mean, this-
And that stops any accusations, because I wouldn't want Daniel to be accused of picking on somebody
Right.
or having prejudice. And once again, you know, the weight of that decision, that is not an easy decision to make, right?
Yeah, the ultimate enforceability is we're gonna tear down your house. Like, well, yeah. We don't want that. We don't want one guy doing that.
Well,
I mean, there's an adjudication process
Yeah, I
to
was gonna
protect
say,
that,
but
but-
well, you know, if they put work, you know, if they
Right.
close the gap, or you know, they're making efforts, that's a lot different. You know, you just don't want something sitting there and it just sits there. It just sits there. It just sits there. You say, hey, go fix this, and they just let it sit. Right? There's got to be evidence that you're improving, even if it doesn't fall within the desired,
Right.
desired timeline. At least they're making an effort, right?
So you're saying that if there's a complaint, the village, whether it be Daniel, police chief, whoever, goes and looks at it, maybe takes pictures, then they bring it to the village or to the zoning board.
Well, and that's why, you know, I think if we just leave it open-ended to say the village, you know, and we just agree.
That
You know,
first
from
phase
how
there-
Daniel executes that role, it's like, all right, Daniel, if
Correct.
this becomes a problem, let's bring it to the group. You know, let's have consensus and make sure that we understand that we've got, you know, solid evidence, solid reasons, a good explanation, and, you know, show us the letter of violation you're gonna send out, and, you know, we'll all kind of sign off on that. Certainly, at least
Before we start.
to begin the process to make sure that we're not just making a mockery out of the thing.
Correct.
You know, and if we frame this up in here as to say the village, well, you know, in this context,
Yeah. Well, we could put that in section 2, part of inspection made by the village and determination with photos be brought forth to the, you want to use this or you want to use the appeals board or the council, whoever. Make a determination whether to proceed with issuing a citation. You know, that would be a section that's open now, we got that section already there, we can just fill it in the way we wanted it to. The way we thought it would work.
Again, I don't know that you need to constrain that completely. And we just, in that respect, just say the village, and it's the responsibility of the village to provide reasonable evidence, right? So reasonable evidence is
Yes,
whatever that might be.
Yeah, because to me, where we're at, that phase you described, where the evidence is now brought in front of, this board. To me, that can kind of be done by anybody, honestly.
Right.
I mean, if somebody complains and they send pictures of something, that's a great, first step. I would, my hope would be obviously, maybe before that, go out and, Danny might go out himself and just verify, or the police or somebody just go out and verify some of that. But that to me, that can be done by kind of anybody really. And then the board, we go, hey, is this enough evidence? I mean, they gave me one picture of this, I don't know, a hole in the bottom, and maybe I don't think that's relevant enough, and then we can just kind of table it and maybe say, hey, Daniel, this is on a list, maybe go check this out sometime, right? And then bring it back and take a loop, until there's something more verified by.
Well, we could do this, we can't make any decisions ourselves. We make
Correct.
what we call
Yes.
recommendation of the council. So we can bring it here. We're kind of the buffer zone for the council, so they're not sitting there all night long listening to people complain about whatever.
Exactly.
So bring it to the zoning, upon a zoning approval, it is forwarded to council, which meets the next week. If we, and then they can decide, well, yeah, it's good enough, we'll go for it. That way it's not on 4 or 5 of us.
Yes.
You've got a committee of 8, 12, 11 people that's gonna say, yeah, this is, needs to be done. That way they're not
That's exactly right.
coming
right?
after everybody or one
You're
person
doing
back
just-
and forth.
It's like the funnel, right? There's a ton of stuff coming in, and we filter that out and just look, because by rights we're supposed to be the subject matter experts on that book, right? Like the council doesn't need to focus on that necessarily, and then
Right.
Daniel's a licensed expert, or if we need that expert, then I guess we can go get that resource and kind of do the homework up front, and then present it to the council to say, hey, we feel this is what we are pursuing, right? And then you have I feel, no, you're not wasting anybody's time at that point.
Right.
At what point do you talk to the homeowner about this violation?
Well, I would say once if somebody's presented it to us, we've approved it and it went to council, then that's when they've received the notice of the violation.
That's a good, that's
But
a
are
good
you
point.
talking more from a
Because-
courtesy standpoint?
Right.
To say, all right, if Daniel's preparing a case, right, and creating evidence,
Do we
it
talk
seems
to
to me
him
at that time,
first?
that's an appropriate time for Daniel to make it a personal thing.
Or
To say,
whoever's doing it.
hey, I
Or-
want to let
or
you
the
know.
village.
Because I actually, I think, yeah, the before you cite, to simply give a courtesy call or say, hey,
This needs
Daniel,
done.
hey, I have this complaint, here's the pictures, can I come out and see this, can I talk to you about it, can we discuss it? Because at the end of the day, we just want the change to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. If they can do that without going through
Through the
everything else,
formal right.
Exactly, right?
it might be as simple as
Or at least to let them
oversight
know,
or whatever.
Hey, I have faith that you're going to take care of this. We're going to go ahead and put it in paper and proceed, understanding that you don't object, and it's just so that we have everything in
Right.
place, right?
Yep.
So you're not coming back
Somewhere
180 days
yeah,
later
I-
and saying, we never got that done.
I know,
Right.
yes, and you give them the
Right.
appropriate time to prepare, or to say, hey, it's already done, look what I did.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then it's off your list and it's done, right? It's taken care of. So I do agree that's part of that front-loaded part of this process.
Before we get
start-
into
Yeah.
any violations or, yeah,
Because that's the part I'm the most worried
Yes,
about, right?
exactly.
Like, we're a small town.
yeah, we want to get along, obviously.
Yeah,
We're not
right?
trying to hang it out here, we hung ourselves.
Yeah.
We just want to improve the community.
Yeah, and if it's going to somebody's house and talking to them about it and talking to them personally, that's a lot better than a letter showing up at their door and they're like, hey, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, a lot of these property, and I won't say a lot, but I know some of them, the owners aren't even in here.
Mhm.
That's
So,
the problem.
that's
Their
a difficult-
property that's Other towns, basically, they don't even know who owns the property. It's
Yeah.
been in limbo for so long. But you make the effort to try and contact. It says in here, the previous lien holder or property owner, last known, try and contact them and go from there.
Well, those are the ones where we definitely want to make sure that we've got that course of action lined out.
Yeah, because I see there's like a notice in the newspaper, but
Yeah, I saw
if
that
I lived
too.
outside of town and I had that property there and you put
Yes,
it in
you're not gonna see it.
a newspaper and I don't see it,
It's still considered
Boy, I'm
legal
gonna
notice,
sue
whether
them.
they say it or not. It's,
man,
you can't chase them down and say, okay, he lives in
I
Fort
know.
Wayne, we gotta put it in the Fort Wayne paper. Or he lives-
I would just make sure whatever's
Yeah.
there is absolutely rock solid, because I would, that would be dreadful. That's a whole conundrum.
Yeah, the communication piece needs to be done by certified mail.
Well, right,
Or
yeah, but
personal
still,
delivery,
it's,
but-
it's both ways, certified mail plus legal.
Yeah,
paper.
right. So that was another. I
And
actually
we should
made
be able
note
to
about
find
that.
tax, the taxes go to.
Oh yeah, I mean,
That's all public records.
mhm. So that was one.
I'm trying to add that into section 2, take photos, village, make reasonable effort to contact the owner prior to any formal action being taken.
Yeah, to me, those would all be parenthetical.
Mhm.
Right? Those are suggestive comments, which, we should have those in there. But here again, we don't want to constrain ourselves to some of these things. These are just parenthetical recommendations,
Is this, I don't know how many problems we have with this. Is this something that's gonna put a strain on Daniel? If he's the one that's doing a lot of this?
what he's there for.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have a huge issue.
But I don't-
Right, that's what I don't know is
Right.
what kind of issue we
I
have.
don't think we have a huge issue at all. Do we?
Off the top
Not
of
that
my
I
head,
know
I'm not
of.
aware.
Right.
That many streets.
Maybe it'll be on my head.
Yeah.
Like a like really bad, that was
Mhm.
really, really bad, in my opinion. But I'm aware.
But there again, what I think might be.
There's been a number of them torn
Nuisance.
down in the last 10 years, so.
Yeah.
We have dealt with the old car wash out there, it's still in dilapidated state.
Yeah, that's
So, and, we've been back and forth, and the owner said he was gonna fix it up, but, so you about have to have some structure, say, okay, you went past the window of opportunity, you can make promises, but you gotta
Yeah, you gotta fulfill.
fulfill them.
Yeah, once again, that path of improvement,
Yeah.
whatever that is,
Yeah,
you need to
can't
see
just say
progress.
reasonable time all the time, sometimes you have to put a deadline on that.
Yeah, now is it like monthly progress? I don't know what that timing is just something to think. I don't know what those are. This was already, in my opinion, very swift. I can't imagine if I saw a letter in my mailbox.
Yeah, they're coming.
Within
timing-
48 hours.
The timing is absolutely
Right, you can't.
fast. Burdensome for sure. So.
And I would say, generally speaking, when we're thinking about things that are, damage from fire or storm or whatever, I mean, there's already, enough presence of mind to, make this thing habitable. This isn't, even in those circumstances, this doesn't need to be leveraged immediately, right?
Right.
After 6 months, it appears that there's nothing going on, then it's time to get engaged. Right?
Well, it's like,
Those folks don't want their house busted
Yeah.
up, but.
but that's where they go, they come in and say, okay, file an appeal, I'm waiting on insurance,
Right.
whatever. If you've got, documentation to prove that you're in the process of it, or you got a
Right.
contractor's bid, and he's gonna be here in 6 months, that's the quickest I can get him,
Yeah, there's plenty of evidence to show. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
won't
yeah.
take a whole lot.
Right.
It's, say the contractor can't get to you for 6 months, it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are out there longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the issue is.
What's it cost to file an appeal on something like that? And should they have to?
Just did that, it wasn't that much.
Yeah.
$25
Right?
bucks.
I think maybe we
Right.
increased to 50. think it was 25 we increased it.
Well, yeah, I think that actually passed not too long ago.
Yeah.
So
Do you
We just
think-
changed it.
Do you
Yeah,
think that's fair if it's an insurance deal like you're saying?
Well, you could be reimbursed for it too.
Okay, yeah, that's,
That
You know what I
gets
mean?
paperwork going, but you know, if you've got
if you,
legitimate,
if your hands are tied and the insurance company's holding it up and is it fair to make them pay a $50?
Oh, and here again, I think that's where that
Variance.
personal involvement,
Appeal.
needs to take place to some degree.
Right.
Right?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
not
mean,
just-
if you had like a blanket state, like, you know, when you this is this procedure of how this works, and you keep it kind of high level, I mean, you keep it a little flexible, right? Like,
Right.
there's gonna be times where you're gonna need real granular definition, and then there's gonna be times where something's kind of general and it gives flexibility, and then, you know, if we find somebody who finds a loophole, we can come back and close this stuff off, right? But I am certainly in favor of keeping that open. Once again, as long as something is occurring and communication is happening to the point where it's getting done, that I'm good with that. Now, if somebody games that system, then
Which will
have to. I guarantee it, but you're gonna learn, right? At least get a solid.
Something in here.
Draft.
that we can Fall back on.
I was gonna say first draft, but it looks like they're gonna be the third draft.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we could put a pause in there, like, upon winning of your appeal, your appeal fee would be reimbursed or whatever. You know, you put that right in there to where it would be part of the bill, or part of the ordinance, where we're not trying to take advantage of anybody.
Right.
no, yeah, I mean, like if you go through and you're cited and part of that, work that needs done, you can set every 30 days that this work is going on, provide evidence that, from insurance, that there's ways to just get some sort of progress report from the owner to show that something's being done. And then if you miss one, and progress isn't being made, some other action occurs, right? What that looks like, I don't know. I think that'll be the hard part.
Yeah, like you say, it's, somebody say, okay, I'm fixing it up, and do one thing, and then they're done for another year, and then they come back and say, okay, I'm fixing it up.
I'd be like, show me your building permit. I want to see your building permit. I want to see the plan, who you have doing it. Show me some evidence. What's the timing? And then when that's done, when that timing's done, this will be the hard part, right? Is to go back out and hey, the timing said it was supposed to be done here, and it's been 30 days after that date, and I still see things not done. That now we got some recourse, right?
You get it in there to where it's, you got it right, but you're not
Right.
stepping on somebody's toes.
Mhm. Yeah.
You need a firm definition of it though, because we all know those people are out there, they'll fix a screen door and say, I'm working on it,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that would be the hard part.
yeah.
But
But here again, I think that's where the adjudication process, really just, that's where it runs its course, right?
and then as you learn, right? As these things occur, I don't know how often this would occur, to be honest, but if it happened often enough, we had some learnings, and there's some things you find out, you come right back in here and revise, right? These are not, set in stone until the end of time, right? Revision 4. Right. So, okay.
So I think we'll go back and, what do you think, everybody try and do their own rough draft, and then next month do a combination of,
Yeah,
If anybody wants to send an email out,
if you get one done, send it out, and this is what I come up with, what do you think, or whatever.
Yeah, for me, this is the engineer coming out in me. I just, I'm drawing a little process flow, right? Just super high level, what are the steps?
Right.
For me, that'd probably be the easiest thing for us to work out. It's like high level, how do we want things to go, right? Complaint, initial evidence, review here, review with the owner. If the owner takes care of the issue right then and there and we don't worry about it, process done.
Right.
Other words, we send citation and we begin that, that second phase, and I don't know how we want that to look like. High level.
Right.
And then we can work out all the details.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, we need to know what that looks like in its totality, right? So, within here, the totality is, we're gonna tear down your house, right? What do those next steps look like, right? I mean, I would have to think that if we're gonna tear down somebody's house, that's gotta come from the court.
Yeah.
I would think that we're gonna have to have
I would imagine
something
that, right?
brought through the courthouse to say, we've, but I don't know if that's defining. I haven't read it enough to understand.
Right.
Yeah, because they
How that-
bid.
According to what this says, if they tear it down, then they send the bill to the courthouse. You apply to your taxes.
Right, but I'm just saying, it seems like you really would want to have a court order to someone's
Well,
house.
I can tell you right now, if you're gonna take it to county court, you wanna take this piece of paper, throw it in the trash, and just say, it's good. Because once the county gets involved, you're gonna be there forever.
Well, here again,
That's.
we're gonna tear down somebody's house. I don't know.
I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying, but here again, I don't know. I don't know
whether,
what that. That's what I'm saying. In its totality, what does that look like? We got a guy. Let's just run the circumstances, right? We got a guy that's living in Florida that owns a house in Antwerp, doesn't give two hoots about it. It's falling apart. He's non-responsive, and things continue to escalate, and we're going to tear the damn thing down. That's one circumstance. The other one is, that's one of our neighbors, and he's got his nephew living in the doggone thing as a renter, and, whatever, and now it's much more personal. And we're gonna tear that down? What does that look like? I would think that would come from a court. I don't know.
I don't know, yeah, because all it says in here is if the owner appeals it, it goes to the proper state court, and all proceedings shall be stayed until final determination by the proper state court and appellate courts. So, if I'm reading the section,
I don't think that's
I don't think it goes to the state. I mean,
go to the court.
Yeah, it
Go to
goes
the court.
Yeah,
county,
The county, right.
So, I don't think that's correct. So I can't imagine Section 7 is necessarily accurate. That may just be a question we're going to have to field to the solicitors when we get to that point.
Right.
Whether we feel enough to hand them to them for review. Right? But in other words, in this particular ordinance, if this ordinance was reviewed, it looks like everything is handled by the village until you turn in, if we demo and you're looking to make up the costs and you're going to attach it to their property taxes, the auditor of Poway County is the only one I see in here. Which does make sense. When I was looking into this earlier, I mean, the village, from a village perspective, you are pretty good authority. The county, if the town presents a very good case, I have a hard time imagining the county would disagree unless it was gross.
Right.
There's some sort of negligence on our end.
When you say that, it's by the village, to me who is it? It could be me, it could be Brian Davis, it could be the police chief, it could be a council member. We're all village employees, so who does it go to?
Well, if something were to go to the county, to my knowledge, you would have a representative, so the solicitor would represent the village, and you would presented to the county courts, and then they would review it. That process would go against the defendant, and then usually you would have a pretty good solid case. You know, I forget the exact legal term now, but it's been a minute. But the town has usually some pretty good authority to initiate these type of claims. Where like civilly, it's a little harder to do because then I have to prove harm on my property, property, right? Where the village has a lot more authority there to initiate these type of things. So. But yeah, so to my knowledge, yeah, you definitely you and the solicitor and Brian Davis would definitely be a huge lead in that, assuming the council would push that forward, right?
Okay. Anything else we want to try and grind through while we're all here today?
That was the big thing,
Some
right?
pretty lofty stuff going on
Yeah,
here.
I mean, that's a heavy ordinance
Right.
right there. It is heavy. You know, there's the vacant building ones, which to me kind of ties into sort of.
Well, the other thing that starts to unravel itself within this is that, you know, I think in general, we're thinking in terms of a dwelling structure, but this is applicable to buildings. So if you have a detached garage or shed, or some secondary structure, you know, the current form, the ordinance applies to any structure. So,
Not just a home.
you know,
Right. And there are structures like that.
and there are structures that should be improved, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
But I think,
The concern is somebody's home, right?
yeah,
That's where things get messy. Well, it's not anything else, but that's right. Yeah,
and this
yeah,
is,
business building.
generally speaking, these are always gonna be initiated by a complaint.
Right. Yes, I agree.
Nobody's driving around.
I mean, it's not like things change every day, right?
Village took care of
But-
their own, village or city took care of their own, they didn't see, you know, county or state when it comes to this type of thing, the village handled it internally.
Yeah.
But, you know, then the appeals would take it on, but.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that almost
Before there's
everything I ever
appeal,
looked
it's
at.
handled through the village exclusively.
Yes. And until you would go through that appeals process where it kicks into the county.
Yeah.
That's where the village gets a representative, which I presume would be the solicitor, but it could be somebody else that would represent the town. And then the file would have everything, you know,
Right.
the case, and then would be reviewed by the county judge that's gonna preside over that. And then, of course, they would be the defendants. And once again, usually the village has pretty good, so if we have our stuff to get together, evidence in the case built, it's pretty hard for the county to kind of go against you.
Right.
Unless if it's proven that there's undue harm under them. But presumably, we would do our homework to the point to show that there is no undue harm. That's the kind of the burden, that's the hill you have to cross. Which hopefully it doesn't get to that point. If it's just walking up to somebody and saying, hey man, this is a problem, fix it.
So your homework is, we need him actually approved onto our board.
Yeah. Do that.
Oh, they missed that one day.
Right now, you're still a guest.
Hey, it's all good.
Okay.
Is the motion to
Timothy, are you just here to watch tonight?
just.
Okay.
Okay. Unless there's any further business, we are ready to adjourn. Okay,
Second?
all in favor, stand up.